What if you could summon someone or something to either appear or happen? And if the said entity makes its presence known, what happens if it decides it doesn't want to leave? In this edition of Doc TV's monster horror documentary series, we'll be delving into the dark worlds of conjure, evocation, and exorcism. Before an entity can stay, it must be evoked or conjured. Evocation is the act of evoking or calling upon or summoning a spirit, demon, deity, or other supernatural agents in the Western mystery tradition. Comparable practices exist in many religions and magical traditions and may employ mind-altering substances with and without uttered word formulas. History. The Latin word evocatio was the calling forth or summoning away of a city's tutelary deity. The ritual was conducted in a military setting, either as a threat during a siege or as a result of surrender, and aimed at diverting God's favor from the opposing city to the Roman side, customarily with a promise of a better endowed cult or a more lavish temple. Evocatio was thus a kind of ritual dodge to mitigate the looting of sacred objects or images from shrines that would otherwise be sacrilegious or impious. The calling forth of spirits was a relatively common practice in Neoplatonism, theurgy, and other esoteric systems of antiquity. In contemporary Western esotericism, the magic of the grimoires is frequently seen as the classic example of this idea. Manuals such as the Greater Key of Solomon the King, the Lesser Key of Solomon or Lemegeton, the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage, and many others provided instructions that combined intense devotion to the divine and the summoning of a personal cadre of spiritual advisors and familiars. The grimoires provided a variety of methods of evocation. The spirits are, in many cases, commanded in the name of God, most commonly using Kabbalistic and Hellenic barbarous names added together to form litanies. The magician used wands, staves, incense and fire, daggers and complex diagrams drawn on parchment or upon the ground. In Enochian magic, spirits are evoked into a crystal ball or mirror in which a human volunteer, a seer, is expected to be able to see the spirit and hear its voice, passing the words on to the evoker. Sometimes such a seer might be an actual medium, speaking as the spirit, not just for it. In other cases, the spirit might be housed in a symbolic image or conjured into a diagram from which it cannot escape without the magician's permission. While many later corrupt and commercialized grimoires include elements of diabolism, the Grand Grimoire even offers a method for making a pact with the devil. In general, the art of evoking spirits is said to be done entirely under the power of the divine. The magician is thought to gain authority among the spirits only through purity, worship, personal devotion, and study. In recent usage, evocation refers to calling out lesser spirits beneath the deific or archangelic level, sometimes conceived as arising from the self. This evocation is contrasted with invocation, in which spiritual powers are called into the self from a divine source. Significant contributors to the concept of evocation include Henry Cornelius Agrippa, Francis Barrett, Samuel Liddell MacGregor Mathers, Aleister Crowley, Franz Barden, and Kenneth Grant. The work of all of these authors can be seen as attempts to systematize and modernize the grimoire procedure of evocation. Many modern authors, such as Peter Carroll and Konstantinos, have attempted to describe evocation independently from the grimoire tradition to fit similar interaction methods with alleged supernatural agents in other practices. Conjuration, traditional and most contemporary usage, refers to a magical act of invoking spirits or using incantations or charms to cast magical spells. In the context of deception, it may also refer to the performance of illusion or magic tricks for show. We will discuss mainly the original and primary usage, describing acts of a supernatural or paranormal nature. The word conjuration, from Latin conjure, conjurare, to swear together, can be interpreted in several different ways, as an invocation or evocation, the latter in the sense of binding by a vow, as an exorcism, and as an act of producing effects by magical means. The word is often used synonymously with terms such as invocation, evocation, or summoning, although many authors find it helpful to maintain some distinction between these terms. The term conjuring is also used as a general term for casting spells in some magical traditions, such as hoodoo. In that context, amulets and talismans are often kept in a conjure bag, and conjuring oils may be used to anoint candles and other magical supplies, and thus imbue them with specific magical powers. Alternatively, the term conjuration may refer to an act of illusionism or deception, as in performing magic tricks for entertainment. One who performs conjurations is called a conjurer or conjurer. The word conjuration or conjuration was formerly used in its Latin meaning of conspiracy. The text of the charms to be recited to conjure the spirit varies considerably from simple sentences to complex paragraphs with plenty of magic words. The language usually is that of the conjurers, but since the Middle Ages in the Western tradition, Latin has been the most common. However, many texts have been translated into other languages. Objectives. The conjuration of the ghosts or spirits of the dead for divination is called necromancy. When it is said that a person is calling upon or conjuring misfortune or disease, it is due to the ancient belief that personified diseases and misfortune as evil deities, spirits, or demons that could enter a human or bestial body. In other beliefs, evocation is the magical art of calling forth angels or demons to bring spiritual inspiration, do the magician's bidding, or provide information. Methods of this exist in many cultures that believe in spirits, such as the shamanic traditions. Taoism, Shintoism, Spiritism, and the African religions Santeria, Umbanda, etc. have particular systems of evocation. Conjuration is a widespread mystical practice in Midwest Asia, most commonly found in Morocco, Oman, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Iraq. Many practice it to settle personal grudges or for healing, personal enhancement, or to foretell the future. Some will sell their services as conjurers to others. Islam strongly forbids the use of conjuration because it is seen as an unholy procedure, and therefore to perform it is to give an insult to Allah. It is also considered to, in the end, harm people more than help them. Those who regularly contact demons are believed to go mad through overdosing on power or being possessed, since demons are thought to be short-tempered entities and, given the opportunity, might overpower and enslave the one who summoned them. A conjuration is traditionally linked to repelling negative spirits and protecting an individual, space, or collective. However, some believe magic and conjuration are inherently evil practices, particularly in Christianity and Islam. Conjurers summon demons or other evil spirits to cause harm to people or things, to obtain favors from them, or to enter their servitude. The belief in similarly minded conjurers also exists in belief systems in which magic is not inherently evil. However, these black magicians are not the rule in these cultures and have opposition from more traditional magicians. Within some magical traditions today, such as contemporary witchcraft, voodoo, and hermeticism or ceremonial magic, conjuration may refer specifically to calling or invoking deities and other spirits, or it may refer more generally to the casting of magic spells by a variety of techniques. Used in the sense of invoking or evoking deities and other spirits, conjuration can be regarded as one aspect of religious magic. In the context of illusionist magic practiced today as entertainment only, conjurer or conjurer is still a common term used by practitioners. In the past, illusionist conjurers were suspected of using magic power to create entertaining illusions and even suspected of casting spells. They were regarded as magicians by the general public, who were often unaware of the techniques and tricks used to create their illusions. That brings us to one of the most controversial rituals in the world, exorcism. Exorcism is the religious or spiritual practice of evicting demons, jinns, or other spiritual entities from a person or an area that is believed to be possessed. Depending on the spiritual beliefs of the exorcist, this may be done by causing the entity to swear an oath, performing an elaborate ritual, or simply commanding it to depart in the name of a higher power. The practice is ancient and part of the belief system of many cultures and religions. Buddhism. The practice of reciting or listening to the Paritta began very early in the history of Buddhism. It is a Buddhist practice of reciting certain verses and scriptures from the Pali Canon to ward off misfortune or danger. The belief in the adequate spiritual power to heal or protect of the Sakakiriya, or asseveration of something quite true, is an aspect of the work ascribed to the Paritta. Several scriptures in the Paritta, like Metta Sutta, Dajjava Sutta, and Ratana Sutta, can be recited for exorcism purposes, and Atanatya Sutta is particularly effective for exorcism purposes. Sinhalese Buddhism. In Sri Lanka, Sinhala Buddhists invoke the protection of the Buddha and the deity Sunamyan to control and disperse dangerous supernatural forces in a ritual known as the Yak Tovil. Tibetan Buddhism. The ritual of the exorcising ghost day is part of Tibetan tradition. The Tibetan religious ceremony Gyuta, literally offering of the 29th, is held on the 29th of the 12th Tibetan month, focusing on driving out all negativity, including evil spirits and misfortunes of the past year, and starting the new year in a peaceful and encouraging way. The temples and monasteries throughout Tibet hold grand religious dance ceremonies, with the largest at Potala Palace in Lhasa. Families clean their houses on this day, decorate the rooms, and eat a special noodle soup called gathak. In the evening, the people carry torches, calling out the words of exorcism. Christianity. In Christianity, exorcism is the practice of casting or getting rid of demons. In Christian practice, the person performing the exorcism, known as an exorcist, is often a member of the Christian church or an individual thought to be graced with special powers or skills. The exorcist may use prayers and religious material, such as set formulas, gestures, symbols, icons, amulets, etc. The exorcist often invokes God, Jesus, or several different angels and archangels to intervene in the exorcism. Protestant Christian exorcists most commonly believe the authority given to them by the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, the Trinity, is the sole source of their ability to cast out demons. Demonic possession can be voluntary, as exemplified in individuals like Judas Iscariot, who willingly submitted to the devil. Requested and performed exorcisms began to decline in the United States by the 18th century. They rarely occurred until the latter half of the 20th century, when the public saw a sharp rise due to the media attention exorcisms were getting. There was a 50% increase in the number of exorcisms performed between the early 1960s and the mid-1970s. Catholicism. In Catholicism, exorcisms are performed in the name of Jesus Christ. A similar practice is deliverance ministry. The distinction between deliverance ministry and exorcism is that exorcism is conducted by priests given special permission from the Catholic Church. In contrast, deliverance ministry is a prayer for distressed people who wish to heal emotional wounds, including those purportedly caused by evil spirits. The Catholic rite for a formal exorcism, called a major exorcism, is given in section 11 of the Rituale Romanum. The ritual lists guidelines for conducting an exorcism and determining when a formal exorcism is required. Priests are instructed to carefully choose that the nature of the affliction is not a psychological or physical illness before proceeding. In Catholic practice, the person performing the exorcism, known as an exorcist, is an ordained priest. The exorcist recites prayers according to the rite's rubrics and may use religious materials such as icons, sacramentals, and relics. The exorcist invokes God, specifically the name of Jesus Christ, and members of the Church Triumphant and the Archangel Michael to intervene with the exorcism. According to Catholic understanding, several weekly exorcisms are sometimes required to expel a deeply entrenched demon over many years. Saint Michael's prayer against Satan and the rebellious angels, attributed to Pope Leo X, is considered the most powerful prayer of the Catholic Church against cases of diabolical possession. The Holy Rosary also has an exorcistic and intercessory power. It was reported that demand for exorcism in Catholic Ireland had increased in the 21st century, with more demand than supply for exorcists and providers of deliverance ministry. Eastern Orthodoxy. The Eastern Orthodox Church has a rich and complex tradition of exorcism. The practice is traced to biblical accounts of Jesus expelling demons and exhorting his apostles to cast out devils. The Church views demonic possession as the devil's primary means of enslaving humanity and rebelling against God. Orthodox Christians believe objects, as well as individuals, can be possessed. As in other Christian churches, Orthodox exorcists expel demons by invoking God through the name of Jesus Christ. Unlike the Roman Catholic Church, which has a specially trained unit of exorcists, all priests of the Orthodox Church are trained and equipped to perform exorcisms, particularly for the sacrament of baptism. Orthodox priests learn to distinguish demonic possession from mental illness like their Catholic counterparts by observing whether the subject reacts negatively to holy relics or places. All Orthodox liturgical books include prayers of exorcism, namely by Saint Basil and Saint John Chrysostom. Orthodox theology takes a uniquely expansive view of exorcism, believing every Christian undertakes exorcism through their struggle against sin and evil. The whole Church, past, present, and future, has the task of an exorcist to banish sin, evil, injustice, spiritual death, the devil from the life of humanity. Both healing and exorcising are ministered through prayers, which spring from faith in God and from love for man. All the prayers of healing and exorcism, composed by the Fathers of the Church and in use since the 3rd century, begin with the solemn declaration, "In thy name, O Lord." Additionally, many Orthodox Christians subscribe to the superstition of Voscania, or the evil eye, in which those harboring intense jealousy and envy towards others can harm them akin to a curse and are, in effect, demonically possessed by these negative emotions. This belief is most likely rooted in pre-Christian paganism. Although the Church rejects the notion that the evil eye can have such power, it does recognize the phenomenon as morally and spiritually undesirable, and thus a target for exorcism. Lutheran churches. From the 16th century onward, Lutheran pastoral handbooks describe the primary symptoms of demonic possession to be knowledge of secret things, knowledge of languages one has never learned, and supernatural strength. Before conducting a major exorcism, Lutheran liturgical texts state that a physician is consulted to rule out any medical or psychiatric illness. The rite of exorcism centers chiefly around driving out demons, with prayers and contempt, and includes the Apostles' Creed and the Lord's Prayer. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. While an infrequent practice in the Church, there are 2 methods for performing an exorcism. The first is by anointing with consecrated oil and laying on hands, followed by a blessing on a specific person and commanding the spirit to leave. The second and most common method is raising the hand to the square and commanding the spirit away in the name of Jesus Christ and with the power or authority of the Melchizedek priesthood. Exorcisms can only be performed by someone holding the Melchizedek priesthood, the higher of the 2 priesthoods of the Church, and can be performed by anyone holding that priesthood. However, they are generally performed by bishops, missionaries, mission presidents, or stake presidents. The Church does not record exorcisms. Therefore, the number of exorcisms performed in the religion is unknown. Demonic possession is rarely talked about in the Church. Demonic possession has been talked about twice by Joseph Smith, the founder of the faith. The first time refers to his experience during the first vision, and he recorded the following in his 1831 accounts of the first vision. "I kneeled down and began to offer up the desires of my heart to God. I had scarcely done so, when immediately I was seized upon by some power which entirely overcame me, and hath such astonishing influence over me as to bind my tongue so that I could not speak. Thick darkness gathered around me, and it seemed to me for a time as if I were doomed to sudden destruction. But exerting all my powers to call upon God to deliver me out of the power of this enemy which had seized upon me, and at the very moment when I was ready to sink into despair and abandon myself to destruction, not to an imaginary ruin, but to the power of some actual being from the unseen world, who had such a marvelous power as I had never before felt in any being, just at this moment of great alarm, I saw a pillar of light exactly over my head above the brightness of the sun, which descended gradually until it fell upon me." His second experience comes from a journal entry in which he talked about when he performed an exorcism on a friend. Criticism: when someone becomes ill, pastors, exorcism practitioners visit the sick person's home, especially in rural areas and communities. Then, with the help of others who believe in faith healing, strive to heal them without using drugs or anything else. Sometimes the exorcist party gets in the way of local authorities or public health officials trying to heal a sick person. Sometimes they don't even ask the sick's consent, a child or a person who can't respond consciously to them, and continue the process. This has not gone well, and critics from scientists, health officials, and the general public have expressed their fears and dislikes for why this should be halted, since the sick individual often dies when he could have been spared if he was put in the common health system. Hinduism. In many Hindu traditions, people can be possessed by bhuts or prets, restless and often malignant beings, roughly analogous to ghosts and to a lesser extent demons. Of the 4 Vedas or holy books of Hinduism, the Atharva Veda is most focused on knowledge such as exorcism, magic, and alchemy. The primary means of exorcism are the mantra, a sacred utterance of specific phonemes or phrases often connected to a particular deity, and the yajna, a sacrifice, offering, or ritual done before a holy fire. These are performed following Vedic traditions and the Tantra, the later esoteric teachings and practices within Hinduism. Within the dominant Hindu sect of Vaishnava, which reveres Vishnu as the supreme being, exorcisms are performed by reciting the names of Narasimha, a fierce avatar of Vishnu that seeks to destroy evil and restore Dharma, or by reading the Bhagavata Purana. This highly revered text tells the story of good vanquishing evil. Another resource for exorcisms is the Garuda Purana, a vast corpus of literature mostly centered on Vishnu, which deals heavily with death, disease, good versus evil, and spiritual health. The devotional hymn known as Hanuman Chalisab advises conducting exorcisms by praying to Lord Hanuman, the most devoted follower of Rama, a major Hindu deity. Among some devotees, merely uttering Hanuman's name terrifies evil spirits into leaving the possessed. Some Hindu temples, most notably the Mahandapa Balaji temple in Rajasthan, host exorcism rituals that invoke incarnations of Hanuman. Islam. Terms for exorcism practices include expulsion of the demon or the spirit, treatment, and curing of the possessed, but also enchantment is used to exorcise various spirits. Specific verses from the Quran are recited, which glorify God, for example, the throne verse, and invoke God's help. In some cases, the Adhan call for daily prayers is also read, as this repels non-angelic unseen beings or the jinn. The Islamic prophet Muhammad taught his followers to read the last 3 surahs from the Quran: Surat al-Ikhlas, the Fidelity; Surat al-Falaq, the Dawn; and Surat an-Nas, mankind. Hadiths reporting Muhammad, but also Jesus, performing exorcism rites serve as examples and permissibility for exorcism rites. Islamic exorcisms might consist of the treated person lying down while the sheikh places a hand on a patient's head and recites verses from the Quran, but this is not mandatory. The drinking or sprinkling of holy water from the Zamzam well may also take place along with applying clean, non-alcohol-based perfumes called itar. According to a study by Elian Al-Kranawi and John Graham, the process of Quranic healing to exorcise spirits can be divided into 3 stages: removing any haram distractions, such as musical instruments and golden jewelry. All pictures in the room believed to allow angels to enter are removed. The healer then tells the client and the family that everything happens by God's will, and that he is merely a mediator. He also mentions that other forms of healing, such as sorcery, are not acceptable to Islam. The healer determines if the client is possessed or not and tries to enter a dialogue with the spirit. The healer might ask the spirit about types are red wind, arwah ghosts, jinn, genie, shaitan devils, div demons, religion, sex, or reason for possession. He also asks the client, not the spirit, about dreams and the feelings involved in the dream. After that, the healer cleans himself and the room, and asks the people in the room to do the same. The exorcism begins by reciting Quranic verses such as Al-Fatiha, Al-Baqarah, Al-Baqarah 255, Al-Jinn, and 3 Qul al-Ikhlas, An-Nas and Al-Falaq, depending on the type of spirit. Other treatments include using honey and water as a purification ritual to clean the soul and body from sins. Judaism. Josephus reports exorcisms performed by administering poisonous root extracts and others by making sacrifices. In recent times, Rabbi Yehuda Fitaya authored the book Minchat Yehuda, which deals extensively with exorcism, his experience with possessed people, and other subjects of Jewish thought. The book is written in Hebrew and was translated into English. A rabbi who has mastered practical Kabbalah performs the Jewish exorcism ritual. Also present is a minyan, a group of 10 adult males who gather in a circle around the possessed person. The group recites Psalm 91 3 times, and then the rabbi blows a shofar, a ram's horn. The shofar is blown in a certain way, with various notes and tones, to shatter the body, so that the possessing force will be shaken loose. After it has been shaken loose, the rabbi begins to communicate with it and ask it questions, such as why it is possessing the body of the possessed. The minyan may pray for it and perform a ceremony to make it feel safe so it can leave the person's body. Taoism. In Taoism, exorcisms are performed because an individual has been possessed by an evil spirit for one of 2 reasons. The individual has disturbed a ghost regardless of intent, and the ghost now seeks revenge. An alive person could also be jealous and use black magic as revenge, conjuring a spirit to possess someone. The Fashi, both Chinese ritual specialists and Taoist priests, can conduct particular rituals for exorcism. Historically, Taoist exorcisms include the usage of fulu, chanting, physical gestures like mudras, and praying as a way to drive away the spirit. The leaders of these exorcism rituals are tanki, that invite the divine powers from the deities and conduct a dramatic performance to call out against the demons so the village can once again have peace. The leaders strike themselves with various sharp weapons to show their invincibility, to ward off the demons and release their blood. This form of blood is considered sacred and powerful, so after the rituals, the blood is blotted with talismans and placed on the door of houses as an act of spiritual protection against evil spirits. Scientific view. Demonic possession is not a psychiatric or medical diagnosis recognized by the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition, or the International Statistical Classification of Diseases and Related Health Problems, 10th edition. Those who believe in demonic possession have sometimes ascribed to possess the symptoms associated with physical or mental illnesses such as hysteria, mania, psychosis, Tourette's syndrome, epilepsy, schizophrenia, or dissociative identity disorder. Additionally, there is a form of monomania called demonomania or demonopathy, in which the patient believes one or more demons possess them. Some attribute the illusion that exorcism works on people experiencing symptoms of possession to the placebo effect and the power of suggestion. Some cases suggest that supposedly possessed persons are narcissists or suffer from low self-esteem and act demonically possessed to gain attention. The work of psychiatrist M. Scott Peck, a believer in exorcism, generated significant debate and derision within the scientific community. Much was made of his association with and admiration for the controversial Malachi Martin, a Roman Catholic priest and a former Jesuit, even though Peck consistently called Martin a liar and a manipulator. Other criticisms against Peck included claims that he had transgressed the boundaries of professional ethics by attempting to persuade his patients to accept Christianity. Exorcism and mental illness. One scholar has described psychosurgery as neurosurgical exorcisms, with trepanation widely used to release demons from the brain. Meanwhile, another scholar has equated psychotherapy with exorcism. United Kingdom. In the UK, exorcisms are increasing. They happen mainly in charismatic and Pentecostal churches and among communities of West African origin. Frequently, the people exorcised are mentally disturbed. Mentally ill people are sometimes told to stop their medication as the church believes prayer or exorcism is enough. If psychiatric patients do not get better after the exorcism, they may think they have failed to overcome the demon and get worse. Notable exorcisms and exorcists. 1578. Martha Brosier was a young woman who was made infamous around 1578 for her feigned demonic possession, discovered through exorcism proceedings. 1619. Mademoiselle Elizabeth de Ranfeng, who had become a widow in 1617, was later sought in marriage by a physician and afterward burned under judicial punishment for being a practicing magician. After being rejected, he gave her potions to make her love him, which occasioned strange developments in her health, and he continuously provided her with other forms of medicament. The disorders she suffered were incurable by the various physicians that attended her and eventually led to a recourse of exorcisms as prescribed by several physicians that examined her case. They began to exorcise her on September 1619. During the exorcisms, the demon that possessed her purportedly made detailed and fluid responses in varying languages, including French, Greek, Latin, Hebrew, and Italian, and was able to know and recite the thoughts and sins of various individuals who examined her. She was further purported to describe in detail, with the use of multiple languages, the rites and secrets of the church to experts in the languages she spoke. There was even a mention of how the demon interrupted an exorcist, who, after making a mistake in his recital of an exorcism rite in Latin, corrected his speech and mocked him. 1778. George Lukins, also known as the Yatton demoniac, was a tailor infamous for his alleged demonic possession and the subsequent exorcism that occurred in 1788 when he was aged 44. His case occasioned great controversy in England. An account of the exorcism was published in the Bristol Gazette. During his alleged possession, the newspaper reported that George Lukins claimed he was the devil, made barking noises, sang an inverted Te Deum, and was very violent. In light of these claims, on Friday, June 13, 1778, 7 clergy members, including Reverend Joseph Easterbrook, accompanied George Lukens to the vestry at Temple Church, where they performed an exorcism on the man, which included hymn singing and prayer. The deliverance concluded when the demons were allegedly cast out using the Trinitarian formula. The clergyman commanded the demons to return to hell, and George Lukens then exclaimed, "Blessed Jesus," praised God, recited the Lord's Prayer, and then thanked the Methodist and Anglican clergyman. Reverend Easterbrook, when recording the events under the patronage of Reverend John Wesley, stated that the account would be doubted in this modern era of skepticism, but pointed to the scriptures and other authentic history of ancient as well as modern times to bolster what he felt was a valid case of demonic possession. An article in the Gentleman's Magazine and Historical Chronicle criticized the account, stating that Lukens suffered from epilepsy and St. Vitus's dance. Dr. Ferrier, a medical demonologist, condemned George Lukens as an impostor masquerading as a demoniac. Nevertheless, George Lukens was described as calm and happy after the exorcism. Following this case, several pieces of literature were printed on George Lukens, thus popularizing his alleged case of diabolical possession and deliverance, despite the original design to keep the case a secret. 1842 to 1844, Johann Blumhardt performed the exorcism of Gottliebin Dittis over 2 years in Muttlingen, Germany from 1842 to 1844. Pastor Blumhardt's parish subsequently experienced growth marked by confession and healing, which he attributed to the successful exorcism. 1906, Clara Germanicelli was a South African schoolgirl who claimed to be possessed. She is said to have been possessed when she was a 16-year-old schoolgirl at St. Michael's Mission in Natal, South Africa. The girl was an African orphan and was baptized as an infant. At 16, the girl allegedly made a pact with Satan, which is said to be the cause of her demonic possession. Clara later revealed this information to her confessor, Father Horner Erasmus. In an account written by a nun, Clara was said to be able to speak languages of which she had no previous knowledge. Others also witnessed this fact, who recorded that she understood Polish, German, French, Norwegian, and all other languages. The nun reported that Clara demonstrated clairvoyance by revealing the most intimate secrets and transgressions of people with whom she had no contact. Moreover, Clara could not bear the presence of sacred objects and seemed imbued with extraordinary strength and ferocity, often hurling nuns about the convent rooms and beating them up. The nun reported that the girl's cries had savage bestiality that astonished those around her. In regards to the girl's voice, an attending nun even wrote, "No animal had ever made such sounds, neither the lions of East Africa nor the angry bulls. At times, it sounded like a veritable herd of wild beasts orchestrated by Satan had formed a hellish choir." The girl, according to some, was said to have levitated 5 feet in the air, sometimes vertically and sometimes horizontally. When sprinkled with holy water, the girl is reported to have come out of this state of her satanic possession. According to a Lutheran pastoral handbook, one possessing these symptoms indicates that an individual is genuinely possessed rather than suffering from a mental illness. Consequently, 2 Roman Catholic priests, Reverend Mansueti, the director of the St. Michael's Mission, and Reverend Erasmus, her confessor, were appointed to perform an exorcism on Clara Germanicelli. This deliverance lasted for 2 days. During the exorcism, Clara's first action was to knock the Holy Bible from the priest's hands and grab his stole in an attempt to choke him with it. At the end of the exorcism, it was said that the demon was forced out and the girl was healed. For 6 years, Clara lived a demonic possession-free life. She felt ashamed for her behavior, asking for forgiveness while seeking humble pursuits. She died in 1912 from heart failure at the age of 22. However, history had lost track of and forgotten Clara in some versions of her story. 1947. Art expert Armando Ginisi claims Salvador Dali received an exorcism from Italian friar Gabriele Maria Berardi while in France. Dali would have created a sculpture of Christ on the cross that he would have given to the friar in thanks. 1949. A boy identified as Robbie Mannheim was the subject of an exorcism in 1949, which became the chief inspiration for The Exorcist, a horror novel and film written by William Peter Blatty, who heard about the case. At the same time, he was a student in the class of 1950 at Georgetown University. Robbie was taken into the care of Reverend Luther Miles Scholes, the boy's Lutheran pastor, after psychiatric and medical doctors were unable to explain the disturbing events associated with the teen. The minister then referred the boy to Reverend Edward Hughes, who performed the first exorcism on the teen. The subsequent exorcism was partially performed in Cottage City, Maryland, and Belknap, Missouri, by Father William S. Bowden, Father Raymond Bishop, and a then Jesuit scholastic, Father Walter Halloran. 1974. Michael Taylor lived in Ossett, West Yorkshire, working as a butcher. In 1974, Taylor's wife, Christine, stated to a Christian fellowship group to which Taylor belonged that his relationship with the lay leader of the group, Mary Robinson, was carnal in nature. Michael Taylor admitted that he felt evil and eventually attacked Robinson verbally, who screamed back at him. Michael Taylor received absolution during the next meeting, but his behavior became more erratic. As a result, the local vicar called in other ministers experienced in deliverance in preparation to cast out the demons residing within the man. The exorcism, which occurred on October 5th through the 6th at St. Thomas Church in Golber, was headed by Father Peter Vincent, the Anglican priest of St. Thomas's, and was aided by a Methodist clergyman, the Reverend Raymond Smith. According to Bill Ellis, an authority on folklore and the occult in contemporary culture, the exorcists believed that they had, in an all-night ceremony, invoked and cast out at least 40 demons, including those of incest, bestiality, blasphemy, and lewdness. At the end, exhausted, they allowed Taylor to go home, although they felt that at least 3 demons, insanity, murder, and violence, were still left in him. While at home, Taylor brutally murdered his wife Christine. He attacked her with his bare hands, tearing her eyes and tongue out and almost tearing her face off, then strangling their poodle. He was found by a policeman, naked in the street, covered with blood. At his trial in March, Taylor was acquitted on the grounds of insanity. He was sent to Broadmoor Hospital for 2 years, then spent another 2 years in a secure ward in Bradford before being released. The bizarre nature of the case attracted significant publicity. 1975. Anneliese Michael was a Catholic woman from Germany who was said to be possessed by 6 or more demons and subsequently underwent a secret 10-month-long voluntary exorcism. 2 motion pictures, The Exorcism of Emily Rose and Requiem, are loosely based on Anneliese's story. The documentary movie Exorcism of Anneliese Michael in Polish, with English subtitles, features the original audio tapes from the exorcism. The 2 priests and her parents were convicted of negligent manslaughter for failing to call a medical doctor to address her eating disorder as she died, weighing only 68 pounds. The case has been labelled a misidentification of mental illness, negligence, abuse, and religious hysteria. 1994. Bobby Jindal, former governor of Louisiana, wrote an essay in 1994 about his personal experience of performing an exorcism on an intimate friend named Susan while in college. Mother Teresa allegedly underwent an exorcism late in life under the direction of the Archbishop of Calcutta, Henry de Souza, after he noticed she seemed extremely agitated in her sleep. She feared she might be under the attack of the evil one. 2005. Tanaku exorcism is a case in which a mentally ill Romanian nun was killed during an exorcism by priest Daniel Petrocorogianu. 2007. The October 2007 Makutu lifting ceremonial lifting the sorcery or witchcraft curse in Wellington, New Zealand, a suburb of Wainuiomata, led to a death by drowning of a woman and the hospitalization of a teen. After a lengthy trial, 5 family members were convicted and sentenced to non-custodial sentences. And there you have it, the ins and outs of conjuring, evocation, and exorcisms. Do you believe it? The search for answers continues. Join us for another episode of Doc TV's Monster Horror documentary series soon.